Hey everybody, it's Cosmata here, and I have a pretty good idea what the next Elder Scrolls is going to be like. And today I'm going to break down all the reasons why I think it's going to be based in Hammerfell. This is all part of some new videos I'm doing to keep people engaged during the long waiting times between Empire episodes. So if you're wondering about that, Empire 3 should be up around early summer, and if you haven't watched it yet, you can check out the first episode right here. Hope you guys enjoy this new video. Here we go. Looking back on the Elder Scrolls, we know that Bethesda has done a lot of the provinces already, so we know that's where we need to start from if we want to get an idea of Elder Scrolls 6. The Elder Scrolls Arena allowed you to explore the entire continent of Tamriel, but there wasn't much to explore, and was a lot like exploring an infinite pancake, so it doesn't really count. Then Daggerfall came along and made some improvements? It wasn't until Morrowind that we start to see a pattern, and we could see that there was going to be a different province every game. The environments were more complex and very different from the previous titles. Trippy mushroom trees, volcanic wastelands. Everything was just completely different. From this point on, Bethesda never makes the same environment twice. Arena and Daggerfall were such similar games, but after Daggerfall, every environment is consistently different than the last. They've done obscure whimsical fantasy, they've done renaissance-y high fantasy, and of course, with Skyrim they did Norse dark fantasy. The only thing left for them now is a desert odyssey. It's the perfect theme that they haven't done yet for any of their major solo titles aside from the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard, which was discontinued. Now there have been a lot of shitty articles posted about how Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be based in Argonia, with shitty photoshopped game title things. Pictures of Argonians in ESO and Tropical Skyrim, and quality reporting sentences like, "They have confirmed that not only has Elder Scrolls has been confirmed." Most of this stuff has been somewhat debunked by now, but I can't say with all certainty that it won't be Argonia. I also can't say with all certainty that it will be Hammerfell. This is just a theory, but based on the info we have, it seems a lot more likely that they'll be doing a desert landscape than anything else. They've done swamps, alright? They've done a lot of swamps, and guess what? They're boring. Well, they're pretty cool actually, but they've done swamps. Like I said, Bethesda never likes to make the same environment twice. With the exception of ESO, of course. But in ESO, you get to visit Argonia anyways, so there's no reason for them to want to make it in Argonia. Pretty much looks the same as Morrowind anyways. I mean, Argonia and Morrowind kind of share the same ecosystem. Bethesda will not want to make a bunch of Morrowind-style textures for the next game. There is a rumor floating around that Bethesda still has the Redguard title trademarked under their franchise, which is similar to how they trademarked the Skyrim title months before the game was released. In fact, they've actually renewed this copyright more than a couple times since the cancellation of Redguard, and a lot of people thought that Skyrim was actually going to be called Redguard, so they've always had this title with them, and they're definitely using it for something, because, let's be honest, it's a pretty sick title. Now, you could argue that Hammerfell is in ESO as well, but like I said before, they haven't really done a strictly desert-style landscape for any of their solo titles. And they could really pull this off in a next-gen game. However, there's also the possibility of Elsewhere, which is almost as possible if it wasn't for the storyline, which I think correlates a little bit more with Hammerfell. So we'll talk about that now. Bethesda has been cooking up their main storyline for a while now. They have good writers that know how to foreshadow events through hints in the game, like dialogue, and the beef with the elves has been stirring for some time now. You know, in Morrowind, we talk to a lot of elven wizards who think they're better than you. In Oblivion, we constantly hear about the boycott between Somerset and Cyrodiil, and then in Skyrim, shit hits the fan. So I'll be very surprised if Elder Scrolls 6 isn't about the next great war with the Thalmor. But to my dismay, there may be a very good reason why it may not be about the Great War, or the Second Great War. And that is because with Elder Scrolls 6, Bethesda is going to have to address the issue of continuing an open-ended storyline in which the previous game player's actions have created two conflicting settings for the next game. They had to do this with Daggerfall, which had around 6 conflicting endings that could happen, and they basically just said that all of them happened. But the conflicting parallel realities collided with each other in a bunch of time explosions, and everything was lost. And nobody speaks about the whole canonical error in their reality. But as much as I love Daggerfall, there have been games who have done this a little bit better. Star Wars KOTOR had a similar ending, with either the light or the dark side winning and taking control of the galaxy. And KOTOR 2 had to clean up that mess by explaining fictionally how 2 different possible endings to a game led to the current sequel of that game. And they did this by explaining how the ending didn't matter at all, because directly after that ending, there was another war, and that was the ultimate outcome of the whole thing. What I'm trying to say is, they dismiss the previous game's possible ending by saying that it was a small part of a greater event that took place. Much like the Second Great War, this is probably the formula that Bethesda will use to deal with the open-ended storyline issue. So whoever wins the Stormcloak Rebellion doesn't really matter, because both outcomes will ultimately lead to the next Great War. That will be the ultimate outcome, and will likely be used to describe the history between Skyrim and Elder Scrolls 6 when the game player asks the question, who won the Stormcloak Rebellion? But even though the next conflict with the Thalmor will likely be used as history, that doesn't mean there won't be another major conflict, and Elder Scrolls 6 will likely still be about the Thalmor. Again, this is just speculation and theory, but the next Great War will probably happen in Hammerfell. So likely we'll be seeing the aftermath of that. It will happen in Hammerfell because Hammerfell was a catalyst for starting the First Great War. The Thalmor wanted to separate them as they were the strongest allies to the Empire, and they likely want it to stay that way. Hammerfell had been fighting on alone for years after they separated with the Empire due to the White Gold Treaty that basically submitted the Empire to the Elves, and Hammerfell didn't like that very much, so they kind of rage quit the Empire and eventually fought back against the Elves and won without the Empire. So I'm guessing Hammerfell's pretty big on the Thalmor's hit list right now, and they're also pretty vulnerable because they're a solo nation. They don't have the backing of the Empire anymore, but I think the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be about that reuniting between Hammerfell and the Empire again, and possibly saving it, possibly destroying it, who knows. What I think will happen is that the Thalmor will attack Hammerfell in a small war, probably won't last for very long. They'll be by themselves, the Empire will be like, no, we're not going to help. We're too busy with the Stormcloaks. Hammerfell will probably be half colonized. By the start of the next game, we'll probably be seeing the same kind of half and half Skyrim scenario where we'll be probably doing some war games that will be a little more advanced, I hope. And then the storyline will probably involve allying Hammerfell with the Empire again to defeat the Thalmor. Also, another reason I really don't think it's going to be in Elsewhere is because Elsewhere is too obscure to sell as a standalone title. The concept is alien to anyone who isn't a fan of Elder Scrolls, and to sell a game called Elsewhere, well, provocative and mysterious it may be, is probably not as solid as selling a game called Redguard or Hammerfell. It sounds a little bit more fantasy, and you know what you're getting into. I really think the whole trademarking of the Redguard title means that they're planning on using this for the next major title, now that it doesn't really exist anymore. And that's much like how Star Wars is recycling all of their old non-canon material and using it for future writers now. For the last part of this video, I want to talk about the dynamics that I think we'll see in the next game. With each title, Bethesda improved upon 3 key aspects of their game: worlds, combat, and dialogue. And though a lot of fans don't always like everything Bethesda puts out, they do have a straightforward pattern, and you can see it reflected in Fallout games. And looking at Fallout 4, I think we can see what Bethesda's cooking up for the next Elder Scrolls.
Armed, wearing strange outfits.
When we're looking at Fallout 3, what we're really looking at is Oblivion. This is pretty obvious the moment you get a melee weapon in your hand. But what we didn't know was what we were also looking at was the prototype for Skyrim. Here's how Bethesda works. From what we can see, they take the previous Elder Scrolls game engine to create the future Fallout title. They create a new engine for the next Elder Scrolls, and then they take some Fallout gameplay dynamics to fuel the future Elder Scrolls title. That's right, I'm talking about VATS. VATS is essentially the prototype for the kill move. And while this isn't as obvious when you're blowing people's heads off, it becomes really obvious when you pull off a melee weapon in VATS. What I'm trying to say is, Fallout can give us hints to what the next Elder Scrolls will be. I'm not saying they're exactly the same thing, but it's obvious that Bethesda used the same kind of paired animation methods for both VATS and the Skyrim kill move. So the question is, what can Fallout 4 tell us about Elder Scrolls 6? Well, the biggest feature in Fallout 4, I think, was obviously the settlement dynamic, which allowed you to use the editor in-game. And this is something I really think that they're building upon. It's getting fairly popular now. You know, Minecraft was a huge hit, Mario Maker was a hit. It would be really cool to build your own castle in a war-torn world that's up for grabs after an empire's downfall, perhaps? And have your own civilians and your own armies. And this is actually something they brought from Skyrim with Hearthfire, so it's not the first time they've done this, and it's only gotten bigger since then, so I'm starting to think that this may be a recurring theme for future Bethesda games. That's the video, guys. Thanks for watching. Empire 3 will be up soon, don't you worry. Please leave a comment below. I know you guys like to talk about Elder Scrolls stuff, and let me know what you think the next Elder Scrolls will be like. And, subscribe and stuff. If you'd like to see more Elder Scrollsy videos, don't forget to watch my Skyrim Machinima series. It's got a lot of huge, epic battles in it. I'm sure you'll like it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you really like these videos, I highly recommend you pledge on Patreon and give me some money. 'Cause that would be cool. Oh yes, and join the Facebook page in the description below. And I'll see you guys when the next Empire episode comes out. See you later.